Last month, I got the opportunity to sit down with Adam DeMartino, who's the co-founder of Smallhold, a specialty mushroom company that was at the forefront of the industry in the US prior to its decline into bankruptcy in 2024. I initially heard about Adam when I came across his article, You Can't Eat Technology, which I'll link in the description and I'd highly recommend everyone check out. In it, he tells the story of his resignation from Smallhold, which was prompted by his dissent of the direction he recognized that the company was headed. This story captivated me for a number of reasons, not least of which were Adam's takeaways from his experiences at Smallhold and the insights he gave into how a mushroom farm could realistically succeed nowadays. Smallhold was a gem of a company in its prime, with space-age looking mushroom farms in New York City, Austin, Los Angeles, which produced a combined 40,000 pounds of mushrooms a week. These guys were everywhere, Whole Foods, Sprouts, Erewhon, you name it. And all the while they were pushing the envelope on how modern technology can be used in a mushroom farm. But all this technology wasn't cheap, and being a first-of-your-kind mushroom farm definitely comes with its risks. Smallhold was primarily funded by venture capital as a technology company that grew mushrooms. This made sense given their initial trajectory, which was building mini mushroom farms that could be placed in grocery stores and restaurants, as well as their focus on using the latest tech in all their operations. But when the reality of growing mushrooms for profit hit, it became apparent that all this technology was just weighing them down and draining their funds. Adam's an incredible down-to-earth guy, and I think his perspective on all this gives some valuable insight into the mushroom industry and modern agriculture as a whole. In this conversation, we go over some of the awesome projects that Adam's been involved in recently, as well as the original ideas behind Smallhold, how the company evolved over time, the various factors that contributed to its downfall, and what we can learn from the Smallhold story looking forward. I really enjoyed chatting with Adam and showing him around my farm, and I hope you get as much out of this conversation as I did. Enjoy. Mushrooms.
They're great. They're really good looking.
Yeah. I've been sort of playing around with harvesting them at different times and seeing what tastes the best and what holds up the best.
Yeah.
This, from what I've found out, is pretty optimal.
Anything that's not open, so you don't have to deal with. These are
that was the first harvest I did.
Yeah.
They opened up and they tasted great, but they started to break apart, and then they dried out within a couple days, like so quickly.
Oh, also they'll just
shelf life is not as good.
Get all gunked up in there with the sporulation.
Yeah, that too. I haven't had too many issues with spores since sort of harvesting a little earlier.
Okay.
But anyway, so.
Yeah.
I've listened to a lot of your stuff and like pretty much everything about Smallhold that's out there in the past couple days.
Okay. Did you research?
I heard that you went on a motorcycle trip across the country shortly before you started that whole journey.
Yeah.
Did that sort of open your eyes in terms of how agriculture is done across the country? Did it influence how you went about starting the company in any way? Or did it teach you any lessons in life in general?
Yeah, it was a long trip. It was 9 months. No, I wasn't studying agriculture. I thought I was going to be a podcaster, and so I brought a recorder and I was interviewing people for their stories, but not wholeheartedly.
Right.
Yeah. So no, I was just it reacquainted me with myself.
Yeah.
And made me more secure after like a shift in sort of how I viewed the world and my professional career. I was looking for somewhere else to live, to be honest.
Yeah.
New York I kind of burned out on, but...
Okay, so you were living in New York before then?
Yeah, I used to live in the same place I live now. I subletted it, sold my stuff, pretty much, most of it.
Cool.
Broke up with my girlfriend at the time. And left my job and bought a really crappy motorcycle and figured out how to sort of fix it.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So just like a full reset.
Yeah. Well, I came back and started consulting again. So I didn't find a place to live that wasn't New York. I wound up running out of money in Seattle and sold the bike to some lady and sort of got back to New York across the northern part of the country through Detroit, and then I started consulting again.
Cool. I love motorcycles. I used to have like an old Honda CB650. I think it's sort of similar to the one you're talking about.
Yeah,
but that sounds like an awesome trip.
Yeah.
I'm jealous.
Yeah. No, I was more Suzuki's, but yeah, they'll just CBs will keep running. Yeah. Those are really good bikes.
Sick.
Yeah.
But so did the trip sort of influence your ethics in any way in terms of when you decided to leave, or how you went about basing the company around making connections with people or localizing food markets?
Yeah, so like first of all, I wasn't like in food before I left. I was in
Yeah.
like tech. I worked in internet privacy before it was a thing, and then I worked at a marketing analytics company that actually wound up being really successful exit. They Yeah, and so as I wasn't like out there looking at agriculture. I was like seeking to like, you know, understand America. I've driven across the country a bunch before that, so it's a really big, diverse, geographically, geologically, right, ecologically, and culturally diverse place. And so like, I realized I traveled outside the country a lot, and I never really truly gotten to know America. And people have this like weird hang up, especially in New York, where it's kind of a bubble.
Yeah.
Like people are like, oh, the rest of the country is like this, but it's not a monolith. And America's honestly if you can go to any part of the country, leaning any political persuasion in any shape or color of people, and mostly everybody's just really nice and they really want to help you, especially if you need help, which I did often on a breaking motorcycle.
Yes, I can
And
imagine.
so that was what I learned the most of. It was like, America's a good place. Florida is my favorite state, and people are
Really?
like, why? Right? It's like, and yeah, it's like dangerous because you could get run over by an old person, a drunk person, or an old drunk person, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's got the Everglades and the Keys, right? And the people who live in the Keys are totally different than the people who live in freaking swamp. And Miami is crazy, and there's like everything. They have the craziest fruit selection. So I don't know.
Yeah.
The country's amazing, and there's a lot of good to be had. And if more people did that, I think we'd have a more cohesive state of affairs right now.
Yeah, for sure.
We do.
Totally agree. So why are you in Florida? What brought you back to New York?
I wouldn't want to live there. It's I'm from this part of the country. My blood runs. I'm from the mountains.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Fitting on that one.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a few questions about Smallhold I want to ask you, but
Yeah.
maybe you could, I know we were just talking about this, but maybe you could just give a quick rundown of what you've been up to since February.
Yeah, February, I resigned from my role as the Chief Innovations Officer at that time at Smallhold, in which I oversaw new product development and all the sustainability initiatives. So those two things were purposefully put together with me. And then I was also the co-founder and on the board. I stepped down from there like basically on Valentine's Day, I think, and started consulting a couple of retail projects, advising different small farms. I take a lot of, and I wrote a piece that I was for a while debating where to publish it. I was going to publish it in like a news media outlet, and decided that I wanted it to be my own and live in a place that I can control.
Yeah.
And so I wrote that. It took me a while to write because I wanted to make sure that I did everything justice.
Yeah, I can tell a lot of thought went into it for sure.
Yeah, and then I also started up a couple different projects, and one of them I'm still continuing pretty in earnest, which is, I don't think I should, I can't, we haven't really formed most of the public facing side of it.
Yeah.
But it's me and 4 other people. We're creating, it's a company that documents cultures, human-centered experiences through the lens of fungi. And our first project is a sort of documentary and new media thing in which we've spent like, total I've spent about 3.5-4 months in Japan, meeting different farmers, loggers, retailers, charcoal makers, scientists, mycologists,
Awesome.
And learning about how shiitake have shaped the culture and the ecology of the mountains, and how that in turn has played a pivotal role in maintaining a certain level of resource management in the country that's slowly fading away as the old men who are preserving the way of growing the mushrooms also fade away. So their culture, Satoyama culture, is being sort of just, yeah, it's just disappearing. So when you hear about like a knife maker in Japan, like no longer making the knives because they don't have anybody to pass it on to. There's a lot of those stories. It's a big deal. When you hear about somebody who maintains a mountain no longer being able to pass that knowledge on, what it means is the mountain erodes, because the humans have been living in conjunction with the mountains in Japan for, a couple thousand years. So they're almost inseparable if you want to continue to have humans living near the mountain.
Wow. Yeah, that's definitely a big deal.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's really inspiring.
That's super interesting. Is it because other methods of shiitake cultivation are sort of taking the forefront?
Well, it's the same issue. Well, it's changing a little bit faster there because they're enacting, I think, international trade rules. I don't know if they're tariffs or what. I should remember. The resource management thing is not going away because they planted too many cedar. Cedar suck up the water out of the soil, and they block out the light, disallowing a lot of the understory to form, to grow. So like a lot of the bushes that would support certain wildlife or other flowers, grasses, and stuff like that. Oak. And oak are what we use to farm shiitake on.
Right.
And so that hasn't been maintained. And so that's
Gotcha.
the main issue. But yeah.
Okay, wow, that's super interesting. So that's maybe what you're going to be working on going forward for a little bit?
Definitely a project. I think it can make money. It's not going to make money for a very long time. So probably...
It's just a seed you're planting.
Yeah, I haven't been looking too hard at my next gig. I don't know whether I'm going to start another mushroom thing or... but whatever it is, it's going to probably have... be a container for the ethics in some part that I instilled in the last business and the values that I want to move forward with.
Awesome. Yeah. And you're on the board of some fungal diversity or preservation thing? Yeah. What are you doing for that?
Fundus. Oh yeah, I should have mentioned that. So Fundus, Fungal Diversity Survey, is the only nonprofit for fungi conservation in North America. And so right now they have a grant. It's about to run out in next year, but it's total, I think, $750,000 to study and protect fungi biodiversity in California. And then we also have little branches everywhere. So it's a community science, citizen science, community science centered nonprofit where we encourage people to go out, collect, ID, and then we sequence the fungi. So the driving philosophy under that is that we're actually, fungi are going extinct faster than we can catalog them. Botany has existed for a very long time, right? Plant science. And so people have been, saying, oh, wow, we're degrading the Amazon, the trees, right? But nobody has ever said, whoa, look at the, fungi that are disappearing at a really fast clip. And that's extremely detrimental to most ecosystems because you cannot replant a forest without, people know this now in our community, but fungi are extremely important to
they're fundamental.
Forest ecology, no matter what forest you're in, some more than others, even desert ecology, right? And so that's what we do is we seek to give people the tools, usually iNaturalist, and the know-how to catalog and protect fungi. And I'm not day-to-day there, I'm just on the board, but
Awesome. I feel like since fungi sort of flies under the radar in terms of being mostly underground, and then even mushrooms that pop out, sort of hidden, elusive, they're less in your face than plants, for sure. So I guess maybe people don't realize what an important part they play in the ecosystem because they're definitely less in your face. Do you think that maybe specialty mushrooms or just building awareness around the fact that there are other mushrooms besides Agaricus bisporus that exist might help increase public awareness of fungi in general?
Yeah, you did your homework on me. That was the reason, that was my mission at Smallhold. And it still is. I think that people, for, unfortunately, people still think mushrooms are plants. Most people.
Yep.
Most Americans. But most people in the world. Like, and they don't care
I get
either
that
way.
all the time.
Right? And so you're actually starting your education, your marketing, if you're a mushroom farmer, you're starting at the highest level of taxonomy.
Right.
Right? Okay, well, you have to educate them that, they're not plants, just like animals aren't plants.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that there though is actually an opportunity, and people, I sound idealistic, but it's an opportunity to get people to think about their environment and other fungi. So like just knowing that there's more than one kind of mushroom, like mushroom is not a monolith,
Yeah.
and that now you have a different flavor and texture profile. Oh, it's like basil is different than kale. Then that I found has been like a hugely, for some people it can be profound. Just maybe not immediately, maybe not at the point of sale or whatever, but when you take it home to your kid and your kid eats it, or you cook it a new way and you're like, oh my god, this is different, or it doesn't. I hated mushrooms because they were rubbery.
Yeah.
It's usually salad bar, right?
Yeah,
Mushrooms,
yeah.
like raw button mushrooms. Of course, you're gonna have a bad experience.
Yeah, I don't like
man.
those.
Nobody likes it. Why do they even sell it? I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I know why, but yeah. So
It's not for flavor.
yeah, but so yeah, I think it can be hugely beneficial to people's just awareness, not just of fungi, but also the environment.
Yeah, for sure. Totally agree. So sort of going off that, what was the original idea behind Smallhold? Was it just to raise awareness of fungi? Were there other reasons? Did you want to, localize food markets?
Yeah.
What was the sort of driving principle behind starting that company? And maybe you could touch on like when it started to depart from that, and maybe where things went wrong.
Yeah, it's great talking about it here in an urban farm in Long Island City when we were like literally a 20-minute hop, skip, and jump away over in Bushwick and Williamsburg. And you said you lived there, right?
Yeah.
The original idea was actually Andrew's original idea, because I came on, I don't know when he started growing mushrooms in Westchester in his basement, and it had the name
Just like me.
Smallhold. Yeah, right, totally, yeah. There's more space up there, right? And if you have access, it's not that far. It gets to be a little bit much of a drive.
Yeah.
But so the original idea, because he was a vertical farmer, greenhouse grower, consultant, and the idea was to provide other farmers with a automated mushroom farm in a shipping container that they could just open up on their way to the market. You're growing basil or carrots or whatever you got, and you just open it up on your way out. You're like, oh wow, I've got like 10 pounds of oysters I can bring to the market, and they're a decent margin.
Mm-hmm.
So just to bolster, farmers market farmers or whomever with some extra cash.
For sure.
And so that's the original intent. And we made a shipping container farm in Williamsburg, and then automated it to a certain extent. None of this, it was great. It's cool to walk into the farms that I walk into now, like the small farms that like you just got this one sort of up and running and seeing it all. Because like we didn't have the internet to tell us. There was no YouTube. Literally, we had drug forums.
Yeah. Shroomery.
And we had to translate Korean text. And then there was the Facebook groups. So there's a few different Facebook groups that we would poke around on.
Yeah.
But even then, people were pretty elusive and gatekeepy, and a lot of it was still based around cubes and everything like that. So
Yeah.
It's cool to see like how fast somebody can get up and running, and like the mistakes that are not being made. But
Yeah, it's definitely a different time. I mean,
it's amazing.
I was able to
So cool.
learn so much.
Yeah.
I've talked to a lot of farmers now, but that's not even super necessary anymore. There's so much information out there. YouTube is huge for me.
Yeah.
I still definitely look at the Shroomery for some more technical things that aren't anywhere else still. A lot of books out there.
It's been democratized quite a bit, and hats off to people like Eric, right, at Main Cap.
Yeah, for sure.
For playing a big role in that.
Absolutely.
Finding Roger Rabbit.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Super cool.
yeah, really well.
Bridging the gap.
Yeah, for sure.
So that was super insightful about like how you guys started, what the original vision was. Was
Well-
there like a specific decision or a time that you departed from that, or was it more like a series of things? Just the original idea behind Smallhold.
Yeah, so there's not a lot of farmers in New York to sell that to.
Yes.
It's like the real. So you talk about early stage product market fit, and it literally didn't fit anywhere. You need a parking lot. Nobody wants to sacrifice parking lot space to a shipping container to grow mushrooms.
For sure.
So we shrank it to the size of a cabinet, like the size of a metro rack. And that fit in restaurants. So we figured the size of that double door fridge would be like something that it could fit.
Yeah.
So we modified it and did some work, and it was really cool. It was actually a pallet rack at first, and we changed that. And we automated that, and we tried to sell it to restaurants, and everybody wanted one, but again, it's the same sort of issue, product market fit. It comes down to the unit economics, or basically you want to turn a table in a restaurant. That's you're, in New York, you're renting a table and getting food. That's how that works.
Yeah.
Like, you could get great food, and it could be a really expensive table. But at the end of the day, that's really what it's coming down to. And so if you take a table out to put a mushroom farm in, you're losing that revenue. And so the mushroom farm, anyways,
Right.
There's not a lot of restaurants in New York that were willing to do that, all the time. And so we actually hung them from the ceiling in a couple of restaurants,
Really?
built them above bars. Yeah, it was nuts. And
That's cool.
hats off to Louis Vassar Semenchik, our first farmer, and his acrobatics, like climbing ladders and doing all that,
Made it work. That's awesome.
yeah, and our engineering team had, pulled their hair out for years doing all sorts of crazy stuff like that. But it was also fun. But that, basically those farms, again, they worked, but they were expensive, and the logistics was still there. Like, you had to get the block in the farm, and then when the farm was running, make sure the block fruited. And if everybody's like, I want it to fruit like on Tuesday, and you're like, it's mushrooms. But so yeah, that eventually, the realization came to me that, well, to all of us, but I was sort of always the more aggressive one, that it was easier to sell mushrooms than mushroom farms. More people could fit them anywhere. So and also, at that point we had installed a couple of them in Whole Foods, which was like a thing, and we raised a bunch of money and on that, because we had Whole Foods now, and they actually were beginning to sell more mushrooms than we could grow in the farms, which we had always like really been like, okay, well, we thought we were good, like with 60 pounds, Whole Foods, but Whole Foods in Gowanus is the second busiest Whole Foods in the country, or it was at the time.
Really?
Yeah, it's a really cool store, and the people who work there I spent a lot of time in there, like a lot of time in that Whole Foods, and I was like tight with like.
Yeah, because you were maintaining these at this point, right? The farms.
Yeah, I would spend nights in there, but also I would cook mushrooms, sample mushrooms.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for
cool.
a couple of years at least. Like, I probably put hundreds of hours on the floor just cooking yellow oysters. But that eventually, like, the logistics of that became crazy. The marketing value was pretty good for educating consumers on what they were. Plants, not,
True.
Mushrooms are not plants, that kind of stuff.
Right.
This is how it tastes. Oh, what did you cook it in? Salt and oil,
Yeah.
right?
That's all you did when you were given samples? Just
Yeah, you don't need to
basic
cook them in
salt.
anything. They're good. They were
for
good
sure.
mushrooms.
I mean, that's
right?
how I do them.
Yeah.
Simple. They
Yeah.
got enough flavor on their own.
Exactly. I mean, you could cook them in all sorts of stuff, make them taste good, but at the end of the day, like, if you want to sample it and blow people's minds, this is just a good mushroom.
Yeah.
Right. But then, so we sold more mushrooms. So we built a bigger farm, and that was the departure point where we began to really accelerate the business, and it's a weird way to get into mushroom farming. It's like backwards.
Yeah.
But we got like famous for the little farms and everybody, and like there was like design publications and all that stuff.
Right.
Actually, the photographer, cinematographer, the director of photography for the project I'm working on came from those days when
Oh, really?
he came and like shot us for some magazine. And it was like
Cool.
Yeah, it was Wild West, but
Yeah. So, was that the LA farm that was the big one you're talking about, or?
no, a big one for us back then was like 3 times the size of this one. So in Brooklyn,
Okay.
on
Gotcha.
Taffy and Flushing.
Right. I know that area.
Did you ever go there?
I didn't go there, no.
I think somebody took it over or something. I don't know what they're doing with it. But you should go and knock on the door.
Someone's farming there? Or
I mean, I hope somebody is. Like,
Yeah.
it was infrastructure and it was up for grabs. So I hope so. I think I
Yeah.
forget who it was. I could ask the guys.
could have been me. Would have saved me a lot of time.
You know,
Although I'm sure it was out of my price range.
this is going to cause you less headaches.
Yeah.
There's some ghosts in those rafters the ghost of molds past. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. I spent like a week straight cleaning this place from floor to ceiling when I moved in. And I was like, I'm not taking any risks.
Yeah.
So hopefully that doesn't cause me issues down the line. But so do you think maybe the economics of the farms that you were putting into restaurants and grocery stores, is that what set you into debt, or made the financials of the company not work at first?
We were always in debt, so it wasn't like we were never in debt. Like we were running on debt. That's the way we financed the business.
Right.
And venture and more conventional debt. No, those farms, like that business, whatever subunit or whatever, we sort of set aside. We had like 20 or 30 of those out in the world, mostly in Texas actually after a while. And they were like manufactured. We weren't making them. So they were really cool. And the engineering team did like an amazing job making those. Like, they're baller. It was so cool.
They were cool.
There's one still in Jubilee Market.
That's the one. I went to that one, yeah.
Yeah, no, we built a big farm in Brooklyn, right? Big, like 33,000, 3,600 square feet, I forget. And then we sort of, before we were finished building that one, we got a handshake from Central Market, which is, it's an 11 store banner under H-E-B, which is the largest grocery store chain in Texas. They're very beloved. And I personally am a big fan of Central Market, and the buyer there is like one of my favorite buyers. And we didn't have a contract, so we decided like, okay, well, we had money and we were gonna go. It had COVID hit, and we had just begun. I built a small farm down there already. Yeah, sorry. So it was the same size farm as Brooklyn, and it was basically me. I was flying back and forth now in COVID, building them.
Okay.
So I wasn't physically building them anymore. We did a lot of the stuff ourselves for the earlier stuff, but now we were like, we have contractors and HVAC professionals and all this stuff. So I was flying back and forth, making sure they were built. Andrew was raising more money, and we were building out the team, and so those two, and then we built another one. So we sold both of them out like immediately, within months, so that each one was growing. And we wanted them to grow like 2,000 pounds each, but realistically they were growing 1,000, 2,000. But eventually our guy here, Jeremy, total badass grower. The team was like tip top. They pushed that farm 3,600 square feet. They were getting about 3,500 pounds out of it a week. That's extremely fucking efficient.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure people can do that now, but like also like, yeah,
that's amazing.
Also, like we had like there are a lot of things that I would have done differently because it was my first farm, and I got an earful from the team all the time, like this, but they did a good job, and that's like just pure grind, and that's one of the most inspiring things about the business. It's like how many people were willing to like grind and like make it work. It's a continuous improvement mentality. But then we started building another farm in Texas because we sold the other one out. It's a big market. Texas is like bigger economy than like most countries. And so
it's a big place.
And we got more money to do it. And then I had developed a modular system for building them out, flat packable. So that was, if you look at the pictures of the farms and videos, they're all refrigerator panels. Those were financed. Those were not Smallholds. So we paid for those as farm equipment. Right? So this is the genius and what got us also into trouble,
Yeah,
right?
I see what's happening.
Right? Well, you could take good debt with intent to pay back. You just took a lot of it and took bad debt. But anyways, that wasn't the flat packable thing was meant to basically expand as demand grew, right?
Right.
But that got sort of taken to an extreme over time. But so we built one half of the new Texas farm, which was 10,000 or 8,000 square feet or something. I forget. Damn, it's been so long. It was a 24,000 square foot farm overall. So we were talking about, many times the size of the smaller farms that we had built, but we built it in sections over time. So we would just unpack a new room, pop it up. I mean, it's way more complicated, but it actually was not that crazy than having to construct it yourself. We built that whole system. And then as we were building that one, COVID hit, the retail market spiked. So everything tanked. All the restaurant customers went away. We started the kits, which became like this huge phenomenon. We got on all the news for those. And so we were flying high. Somebody called us a $90 million company. We took it, right? There's a lot of back and forth around all that. It's like, it was not the best decision to take a $90 million valuation, but also it was, if you looked around, like we were actually one of the lower valued technologically advanced farms that were being valued.
Right.
You're looking at Bowery, you're looking at Plenty. Plenty is like $1 billion or something valuation.
Wow.
Right? To grow lettuce. We had mushrooms.
Yeah.
You know how much more,
Yeah.
money you can make from mushrooms
Yeah.
than you can lettuce, even at a scale like that. So I think, and people can argue, but, we'll see what happens to all these farms over time. And so, we had this influx of cash, and then this is where I began to part ways with like the team and how we wanted to grow. We had a lot of people working with us. Some people were not from agriculture and food. I had learned a lot. I'd actually at this point flown around to different farms, talked to different farmers, met people who knew way more than me about logistics, about farming, about agriculture. I went to Korea. I visited the largest king oyster farm. I went to Japan. I visited these people. I was talking to like these equipment suppliers. They're like, you need this. And I was like, oh my God, I'm doing it wrong. Right? And I'm doing it wrong at a scale that can rectify. We could change things.
Yeah.
But, we had been pitching the company as a technology company.
Right.
And I had always said I don't want to just be a mushroom farm. But what I didn't realize is that the value of what we built would actually come from the brand. And the brand was this. It was telling people, this is just not plants, right? It's like you can eat something, this is new. And then there's a whole subcategory that we made, basically, as a national retail phenomenon.
Right.
For specialty mushrooms. And that was the value. And that was good enough. You didn't have to be a 10x in 5-year technology company. You created a freaking category.
Exactly.
And a brand that would carry it for a while, at least until you had to compete on price. And we didn't own that and reset expectations with investors, which is a really hard conversation to have.
Sure.
So then the next step was build a 36,000 square foot farm in the middle of downtown Los Angeles. And I had plans for like 10 or 20 of them around the country, like this massive, and we're talking about CapEx expenditures that was like significant based on expectations that were set and promises that were made across the industry, not just us, of a market that was growing exponentially, and it was. But, any farmer will tell you when it's good, it's good. When it's bad, it's really bad.
Yeah.
Right? And farmers do not get any contract, right? And they can tell you they do. Then maybe you do if you're Dole, right? Or if, like Giorgio probably has contracts for button mushrooms, But the reality of the situation is smaller farmers, even Smallhold, at the biggest size did not. And we put our farm in the middle of the most expensive labor market, pretty much in the middle of one of the most expensive states, in the middle of one of the most expensive cities, right? Using the most expensive equipment, the most logistically challenging shit.
Yeah.
Right? And a bunch of us had advocated either to shift our business sort of away from straight production and this is at different times, and so it all gets sort of overlapping and muddy, but there was definitely a big contingency to build in Nevada, where electricity is cheaper, labor is cheaper. We wanted to pay a living wage no matter where we were. Living wage is way less expensive in Nevada than it is in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
But anyways, I began that project. I began the build out, but the edict came down from more than just me, and I had begun to lose a lot of influence at the business.
Gotcha.
And I was reduced to at a certain point. I was reduced to like rabble. Like, why are we doing this? Which is, whatever. I took it. Actually, I was a big grump, but I wasn't absolved of any responsibility. I was still building things, and I was like rallying the team, like, we need to do this. It was definitely. But the reality situation was, we did not need a 36,000 square foot farm immediately. I had built a system for modular deployment. And we could get the warehouse even in LA and build a corner of it and then sublet the rest of it. We didn't do stuff like that based on like a model that had wild demand projections based on an unproven market.
Yeah.
And that's the reason we suffered, and we took out a lot of debt against that. That was very speculative, and it was punishing terms. And when people came, when the chickens came home to roost, you looked around, you didn't have the money to pay them back. You could have told them, that you weren't going to pay them back, but we didn't do that. We didn't own up to the investors that we weren't going to do the things we said we were going to do with the technology, because the technology was good, but you don't need that to grow mushrooms all the time. You got it, right?
Low tech.
I mean, it's a small room, but you need just enough. You need the right tool for the right job. So right now,
Yeah.
You have the tools. Maybe you do need a bit more as you grow to manage a system, but ultimately farming is farming.
Right.
And you grow at the pace of your mushrooms, and
For sure.
and the market. And so, when reality hit, that's when I quit once a couple years before I actually resigned, but stuck around to take on the innovations role. And that's when I began to take all the waste that was being produced at the farm because of the fluctuating demand, and turn it into new products, and B Corp the company. Basically, it was the best job I ever had, right?
Yeah.
I could do the
sounds
cool
like a
shit that
dream.
I always wanted to do. Like any mushroom farmer wants to get to that, right?
Yeah.
You want to be like, oh man, this is taking all our waste and turning it into like whatever tincture, like whatever you want to make, and it's like circular. And we made the largest circular company, I think, in the country.
Yeah.
I still think nobody's challenged me on that, and I've spoken at a couple business schools. So, but now it's not. But
I believe it. I mean, mushrooms are one of the few that even has a chance of doing that.
feel it, yeah. So that's what happened.
That makes sense.
So that's when the departure came. So LA was the real definitive marker. It was taking on the debt to build, to scale that quickly. That was the definitive marker of like, okay, this is not going to work for me. Like you could see it coming from like 2 years out. And I did what I could to try and change it up until the very, 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 very last minute, because I cared.
Yeah.
I could have walked away, and I did eventually. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
So I know we're probably a little short on time, so I'll just fire a few things at you, and feel free to answer whichever you want.
Here, let me check the time. I got 3 more minutes.
Okay.
All
Okay.
right.
Cool.
I know.
What is the solution?
The
Do you think that there's a place for small farms in terms of cornering off local markets that are maybe low tech, focus on the fundamentals, and
Solution for
don't
what?
take on debt? The solutions for having the kind of impact that Smallhold wanted to have in terms of increasing awareness about specialty mushrooms, bringing them to more people, creating more localized food markets, all that stuff. Do you think that smaller companies are more poised to do that, or do you think that a larger company like maybe Far West Fungi or something like that on that scale that has been growing for a long time is just going to take over the market? And
first of all, let me be clear. Like the impact that I wanted to have, I actually wound up having. I wanted a global impact. We were actually supposed to send those things to space. Those small.
I heard about that.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
It's a whole other thing. But I actually think that they could still be used there. They're good enough to go there. But in my opinion, of course I'm biased. But so I didn't go to freaking moon. Like every founder wants to go to the moon, right? You would shoot for the moon.
You guys literally.
Literally. But we did change the market, and we did open up a path. And there are people on the internet now explaining how to do this, right? Not just because of Smallhold, but I think we played a big role in that. And the market is changing, and I think it's a positive thing.
For sure.
More smaller producers. Look, in all honesty, you're all not gonna make it. Not everybody can make it, but the more people that try over time, the more that develops the market and more people understand what mushrooms are. So yeah, you go to your farmer's market and there's some old lady that until she was 85 hated mushrooms. Then you get her to try a different one. Now she likes them.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a real thing, and that's changing eating habits. And we, in a way that I didn't expect, accomplished that. So I feel good about that. And it's still going. It outlives me. So that's what I said on another interview. Is like you can buy my company. We can bankrupt the company, but you cannot bankrupt or buy the mission and the values. And that's why I am still talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it works. It works. What was the question?
I guess just what role do you
yeah.
think small farms can play versus the larger players?
Yeah, so on a technical level with retailers, or with selling mushrooms, like growing and selling mushrooms, there comes a point in every small farm's trajectory where you realize, I cannot do it all, right? Because there is not enough time in the day, and everything is stacked against you to succeed. It is.
Yeah.
And so small farmers markets are good. If one van and a farmer's market is the sustainable size, at least around here, for a mushroom farm.
Yeah.
If you go beyond that, you're in this like sort of liminal space between van and big truck, and you need to fill both completely to make logistical sense for your deliveries. And that's actually where it really comes down to. People are going to pay for the mushrooms. That you got to get the most amount of money for every pound or whatever unit sold.
Yeah.
So you can offset that in different ways. So I think like the best thing that farmers can do right now is recognize that and then find a niche and exploit it, rather than, like for instance, I think the story of Main Cap, Mosum Valley, Mosum.
Yeah.
You know them?
Yeah.
And North Spore, the early days, as told to me, and I'm probably going to fuck it up. So if anybody watches this, correct me. But I think it's I'm going to reduce it to like they all met one day because they maxed out their market of Portland and then kind of Boston. So they were all, I think, growing and selling mushrooms or planning to grow and sell more.
Yeah.
And it's not a big market up there.
Right. In Maine.
And yeah, even Boston, I think, I'm not sure. And you can keep going outside of there, like New Hampshire and stuff, but the reality of the situation is they all sat down one day and they said, well, you are going to make the spawn, or I will make the spawn. I will make the bags. And the other was, I will fruit the mushrooms, right?
Yeah.
Right, so find a specialty and do that. And so now it's not that. It's like we have the spawn makers, we have the bag makers, we have the equipment manufacturers, we have the fruiting people. Like, what's your niche now? Like, how do you continue to evolve that? Like, okay, I make the best oyster. We had a brand that we really honed. Like, this is the ecological pack, right? We carved a niche on the shelf.
Yeah.
These are oyster mushrooms, not button mushrooms, right?
Right.
Okay, well, how do you continue to segment that successfully? Tinctures, sure. Okay, well, how is your tincture different? So that's what I would say.
Yeah. So specialize.
And add value.
Add value.
Yeah. Mushrooms, your margin is going to be 20 to 30%.
Yep.
And you're going to work really hard for that margin. But if you have a shelf-stable product, when times are shitty, you can just pull it off the shelf and sell it.
Oh,
and
that
so
helps.
I'm just saying,
The extracts are a lot easier to manage in that respect.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Well, thank you for that advice. That's, I think, a good way to end.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Cheers.